Welcome to the 98% podcast where we hear real stories from real people. And I'm here with Max Strutman. So, Max, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Let's see. I work as a data engineer. I guess that's my job. I find that part about me at least relatively interesting. Uh, and then let's see. What else is there to say? I'm a giant nerd. Um, I like tattoos. I run. I love running. Maybe too much, even though I'm kind of fat, even for a runner. Um, hmm. Yeah, I guess I'll start with that then.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. It could go in a lot of different
There
directions,
you
you know?
go. Yeah. So, how do you know me?
How do I know you? So let's see. Um, two. So in college, I guess we're gonna go back here a little bit. The way back machine here, back in time. When I was in college, I was a cheerleader, and two of the people who I cheered with were, um, anyway, two guys who I cheered with in college ended up living around
Yeah.
you. And then we stayed in contact over the years, and we started doing game nights. Um, so the two of us, me or you and I, started doing game nights together, and that's basically where we got introduced. Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that covers it. Doing nerdy stuff,
Exactly. Yeah. Why
is
not?
what I say.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah. So
anyway.
that person was David. So David's already been on the podcast. So I think he was episode 8 or something like that. And then Greg, and Greg's going to be in a future episode. So it's pretty cool. So game night, I think I remember. What was the first game we played together? Was that the Mansions of Madness?
Yeah, Mansions of Madness. Yeah, it was.
Dude.
And I think we lost too, if I'm remembering
Oh,
correctly.
yeah. I just remember it's funny. First time meeting, I just remember like we connected pretty well. I remember just like causing a whole bunch of chaos in Mansions of Madness. We're
Yep.
having way too much
Yeah,
fun.
fires and all, fires and the like.
Yeah, yeah, that was that one, wasn't it? The one where me and Greg were
You would,
were
yeah,
insane or
Greg,
whatever,
you,
and I needed to catch things on fire, and he
yeah.
was trying to trade what cards, command cards or something
It
like
was a
that.
spell.
Yes,
Yeah,
spells. And he was so obvious
yeah,
about it. Anybody got any
yeah,
spells you'd like to trade? We're like, why? So you can win?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was good.
Yep. That was the first time. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. So I mean, and then obviously, I guess we continued that for I guess multiple months really. So kind of became a tradition almost to get together and do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's crazy.
it's fun.
We continued it for I think over a year. I think didn't we?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really keep track of it.
Yeah,
So
it flies by though.
it does. It does.
But yeah, so and then we'll have a future game night here soon. I hope. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of gotten into the very adult thing of like everyone's kind of got different schedules and it's very hard to get everything in sync type of thing.
That's exactly right.
It's like yeah, it's like everyone just kind of has slightly different priorities, so it's just hard to get them all on the same page type of thing.
Yeah.
I feel like it happens as you get older, right?
Yeah. Right.
You get more like responsibilities or more things.
Makes sense. I think some of it was summer too, or it feels like it anyways. Because summer hit, it's like everybody was busy on vacations or doing something. So we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see if we do
yeah,
one
that's
in
fair.
September.
Yeah, that is fair.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of travel for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so how this works is I gave you a set of questions, and we're just going to go through the questions, and you can answer as in depth as you want. And the goal of this episode is just so the guests can get to connect with you on a on a deeper level, and hopefully find maybe some similarities or some common interests. So first, let's go start at the beginning. So, what was growing up like for you?
Growing up, um, let's see. I'd say like very, very typical like suburban grow up type of thing. Like yeah, grew up in suburbia pretty much my whole life. So I'd say generally just about all the stereotypes that kind of go along with that kind of followed. Um, my parents split when I was super young. Um, I was like 4 or 5 years old when they split. And then my dad got remarried pretty quickly after that. and my mom never did again, really. So my mom actually pretty much stopped dating after they divorced. Um, yeah. So I guess that was a little bit of that. So I had a split upbringing. So I was like, I was at my mom's part of the time, at my dad's part of the time, type of thing. Um, and then see where do we go from there? And then I guess probably the next significant change from that would have to be in high school when I started like shifting quite a bit type of thing. So um I kind of grew up really with only like one real set of friends, and that was from my dad. Like it was like a relationship that my dad had with another parent, and it was all of his kids basically. So it's like I don't know if you really call them my friends; they were more like my dad's friends. That like because he knew him, I got to hang out with them type of
Yeah.
thing. Um, so that was probably like my only like true friend group growing up. So I was a pretty like lonely kid, I would say generally, pretty to myself type of thing. Um, so when like high school and stuff came around, I had kind of this choice to go between my mom or my dad's, and I was primarily with my mom most of the time, and so was my sister. Um, but I chose to go out and basically go to school with my dad as compared to my mom. So my mom was more in like suburb area. My dad was in more like developing country area where like if you said that now, the place is like very suburban now, but like when I was out there, it was more like country-ish type of thing, you know. It was, but it's like over the last 14 or 15 years that I've kind of been there. It's kind of changed quite a bit. So um, but so I went out with my dad at the start of high school because that friend group that they had was there, and that was like the only friend group that I really had. So I wanted to be with them. Um, so I did that, but I kind of ran into some issues there living with him. I would say he's an interesting person. There's a lot of things to that. If you want to unpack that trauma dump. Um, so uh, so yeah, so I moved out there, but because of kind of the hardships and some of the stuff that my dad and I had gone through, I actually ended up moving back in with my mom. So I switched schools going into high school, and then after one semester of high school, I switched schools again back to the school that I was going to go to originally. Um, and then when I came back to my mom's, I hated it even more because I had no friends. Like I was, even more isolated, especially since everyone kind of started their freshman year of high school together, and I started at a different school, and then I came in later, so like I was taking different classes, and so a lot of people who I was with are like juniors and seniors and stuff like this. It's it was just like I couldn't really make friends or really identify with anyone, and it was like that that was another semester or the second semester of freshman year where I was like, man, this really sucks. Like, I mean, it was probably one of like the lowest points in my life, like mentally, I would say. Um, and then I got the option to essentially go live with my dad again, which, like I said, I had a rough time with that the first time, and I wasn't sure if I could really do something like that again. Um, but I was so miserable at my mom's that I was like, I need something type of thing. Um, and it was that summer over freshman sophomore year where I kind of like I would say like reinvented myself. I kind of just instilled this mindset in myself of like I have to talk with people. I have to just open conversation. I have to just say things like say something to people type of thing. Like even if it's wrong or if it's not all the way thought out, like your your inaction is kind of limiting your possibilities type of thing and like limiting who you interact with. And so I kind of had to fake it till I make it in terms of like being a somewhat social creature or like um teaching myself how to like properly socialize with people because I realized the alternative was lonely and not a lot of friends and stuff like that. And I was like that was hard on me. So I kind of like taught myself some social skills, I guess, in that regard. And so when I went into my sophomore year back out at my dad's again, uh, I actually started to like grow a friend group type of thing. Like there were multiple people who I would hang out with. There's like kind of like different pockets of people who I would that are like in different groups. Like there were some hockey players I'd hang out with, and then there's some like alternative guys or like people in bands that I'd hang out with. So just kind of like there's some sports guys. It was kind of just I kind of just rotated around, and I had a very diverse friend group, I would say, or at least that's what I would say at the time. Obviously, like you look back and you're like, a lot of these people don't end up actually being, your long term friends. Most of them end up like, but at the time you're like, okay, I'm like well received in all these places right now. Um, so that was like the first time that I actually had. I'm not gonna say it was no level. There's no level of popularity, but it was like I actually felt like I had people. I always had people to hang out with, or always had friends to like be around, type of thing. So I think generally, in terms of like my batteries definitely recharge when I'm alone and not with a bunch of people. Um, but I can like do it in limited doses because of like basically like I told myself that I had to be okay with some stuff like that. So yeah, I guess that kind of takes most. I'd say that's like some of the larger things that happened throughout my youth, and that kind of gets us up to um, when you're technically considered an adult, 18 years old or so, right around there. So, and yeah, right when I was about to head off to college. So I guess that kind of covers a little bit of the origin story, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny. I would have never guessed that either, because like since I've known you, you seem super social. So I would, if I was to guess, I would have guessed that you were kind of like a social type
Yeah.
person. So that's interesting. So just curious. So it sounds like you found a good way. Like I felt like, right. So people get dealt different hands. That's just how it is in life, right? But I feel like you took that and you found a way to kind of make it through. Like if you were to go back, would you change anything about your childhood?
Um. Well, I think that everyone. I think so. Ah, okay. This is gonna be a little bit philosophical
Yeah,
here
yeah,
because it's like, um, I think everyone. I'm not gonna say everyone. I think a lot of people from like your and I's generation are the products of parents who probably weren't 100% ready to be parents.
okay,
Um, I think like I think that the natural conclusion for everyone for a long period of time was just you get married and have kids, or have kids get married, or something along those lines. That was kind of the future that you work towards. Everyone was kind of on the same page with like that's what we're building towards. That's like the dynamic family or the nuclear family. That was kind of the whole thing. Um, and I think a lot of those very traditional aspects and stuff, including the negative things that go along with it in terms of like I mean like if you go to my dad's generation, he wouldn't be allowed to share his feelings with someone.
yeah,
He wouldn't be allowed to tell his dad like this isn't okay, or like speak out of turn, or he's not allowed to do those types of things because it's ingrained in them from the start, like to not type of thing. So I think it's just some of these things, or not. Not gonna say improvements in life, but some of these things of like how we can like really be a better person. It that all comes from evolving over time, right? And so it's like if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective type thing, that like our parents are kind of one step behind us because we take all the learnings that they had and then we try and do better, right? Or we expand upon it type of thing. So uh, we 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 as a collective society are always kind of in the process of hopefully making better humans, right? Like my kids are better than me. That may not be, that may be work better than you, that may be personality better than you, whatever it may be. It's taking something of what you are now and trying to glean the better parts of it, right? This is evolution, you say what are the best parts about me? I want to pass these along, and I want to foster these things so they get better and better, type of thing. Um, so I just think like some of the issues that we have generationally and stuff are like natural parts of humans growing. Um, essentially, I guess is kind of what I'm saying.
So that makes sense. So then, are you thinking that? So just to go back to that, I guess. So, are are you thinking that the solution to that is to wait till you're ready to have kids, or do you think that was just a random outcome just from having kids at a young age?
No, like I think I don't think that there's any causality between the two. I
Yeah.
think it's we're now reaching a time where it's more okay to say my future doesn't have to look like that,
Uh,
right?
Gotcha.
Like maybe you can be happy being alone, or you can be happy just being you and another person, no kids, or maybe you want 500 dogs, or maybe you want to start a bat rescue. I don't know. It's like I think everyone's definition of what a happy life is or what a successful life is can vary, and I think that uh,
So,
we should be supportive to all of those, I guess. So like we should encourage people to be exactly who they are. Like if people want to make podcasts, we should encourage them to make podcasts, you know?
yep.
If they want to create things like this, like we should be encouraging people to do this. It's like these are the things that really keep people motivated in life, type of thing. Um yeah.
Gotcha.
They're good for the soul.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So you did mention one thing earlier when you were telling your story too, and you talked about, which I always think this is a fun thing. Is you talked about inaction. You talked about how inaction was actually keeping you from getting where you needed to be, right? And I think about that as a lot of people think that, well, if I don't make a decision, then it's not making a decision. But you realize that when you don't make a decision, you're actually making a decision, right?
Yeah.
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 You are. I mean, so so it's like, I mean, this, I don't want to get all like guru
Yeah.
or whatever, right? Because like, I mean, you can go really deep with
Yeah.
this, but it's just like, it's just like, it's a growth mindset, right?
Uh-huh.
That's what you should always take yourself for where you are in your
Yep.
life, recognize your weaknesses. Like, I can tell you right now, like, I can tell you right now everything that I probably do wrong because I know that I do them wrong. And there are things that it's like, that's, I wish I could do better, but we're humans, right? It's not as easy to just be like, oh, I should change my behavior, snap, and it
Uh-huh.
happens, right? These things take time. So it's like always trying to experiment with that, right? Where it's like saying, well, here's where I'm at. So what if I try doing this so I can get better at it? So everything is just how can you be slightly better at this? I mean, I guess I try and apply that with everything. So relationships, games, whatever. It's just like how can I be just slightly better than what I was the last time that I played it or the last time that I did it, type of thing. I think it really helps with that. And I also think it's also why, like, for most of my life, I had no issue, like, quote unquote, shitting on myself or like having self deprecating humor
Yeah.
because I know in my core that I'm not as bad as I say I am, but I like to say I'm bad so that way I can keep perspective of like, some things, but there's always more out there,
Uh-huh.
right? It's like you are always a small fish in whatever
Yeah.
pond you're in, right? If in my world at work, like I know a lot about my job and the things around it, but there's going to be people who know 10 times what I know and like are so much better than me. So it's like there's a lot of times I swim in ponds and I'm like, oh, I kind of have, I know everything that's going on, type of thing. I know how we should do all of this. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm actually pretty good at this. But I always like to keep me grounded with the fact of like, something, man, but there's people who just know a lot more. So
Yeah.
I think perspective like that always matters. It shouldn't be arrogant, but you know, it's like a very fine balance, right? For this, like you don't want to act like you know it all type of thing, but you also don't want to undersell yourself or what you can do, type of thing.
It's true. Yeah. That fine line between what confidence and arrogance, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
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 And it's funny too, because yeah, it's kind of like that master versus student mentality, right? They said even if you know a lot, if you go at it from a student mentality, you're always going to learn something and grow. Because the master
Yeah.
tends to think they know it, so then they never grow from that point because they got it mastered, right? So I like that perspective.
Yeah, I think I've said this very often. So I guess in terms like career wise or whatever, like I didn't really follow a traditional path, I would say. I imagine most people out there don't follow like quote unquote traditional paths of whatever they're going through. So like I mean I went to school for accounting and I'm a data engineer. It's like there's some similarities in the sense of like you work with some numbers type of thing, but the actual everything about my job is just so completely different than what I went to school for and what my first job was. I mean, my first job I was doing data entry type of thing, so it's like I kind of uh yeah, I mean I was very, you know, low man on the totem pole. I wasn't making a lot of money or anything type of thing, but it was the whole it goes kind of like go back to the growth thing of just like I just kept saying yes a ton of times at work. Someone was like, "Oh, we're going to start up a new team to do this type of thing," and or whatever. I was just always open to like new teams or new skills or whatever. Anytime something like that came up with my manager or our team or like my organization or whatever, because I worked in large companies at the start of my career. Um, Anytime opportunities came up to like start something new, I was always just like, yeah, yep, let me do it. Like, yep, let me get after it type of thing. And I have to like, this is the part where I'm like, I give huge pause because I'm like, I got very lucky. I, like, uh, I have, I had an interest in computers for a long time in my life, but I just so happened to like stumble upon a field that's related to computers that is like it has a very good career path. It has very interesting things to learn. It engaged me in like the mental aspect of like there's a lot of nuance and a lot of things to learn about this job, which is what attracted me to it. But I just got lucky, I guess, because like I feel very, very lucky with like where I'm at in my life right now, especially work wise. Um, and I think I just think I'm really lucky in that regard. I think I manufactured some of my own luck, or at least I'd like to hope so, right? Like we hope that the decisions we made actually mattered, and it wasn't just like a slot machine. We just happened to get lucky, right? I would like to hope that that's the case, but I also, given the whole like I like to stay grounded thing, it's like I tell myself, I'm like, if people had the same privileges and benefits that I did in my life, they probably pretty much end up exactly where I was anyways, type of thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, ceteris paribus, all things remaining unchanged. If you put someone else in my exact life circumstances, I tell myself that they came to the exact spot that I got to. So I don't think I'm anything special, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, that's a funny thing to think about. I was talking to someone actually yesterday about this. Is I think there is a luck factor to it, right? Like if you think about it, like you, and I think a good way to think about it too is like if you're consistent and you're putting in the work and everything, then I feel like you have higher probability of the luck factor
Yeah,
happening, right? Because then the opportunity
yeah,
opens up and you're already ready for it. So there you go. And
yeah,
I like that you talked about that. It's like you mentioned being lucky because I feel like sometimes what people do when they have some success is they like they get successful and then they try to draw the conclusions about how they got there. And then before you know it, they're like, well, I did this,
yeah,
this, and this is how I got to where I am today. And I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. I think there is still a
yeah.
luck factor. I think it's easy in hindsight to say like, well, I did this, this, and this got me here. When you
Yeah.
might be right. There might
It's
just be some opportunity that just presented itself at the right time. And guess what? You were ready for that opportunity.
it's it's very much, and this is, I mean, this is, I mean, this is partially how anyone is, but it's also something that and by we I mean like America as a whole is very like attuned to, and that's results based analysis.
Mhm.
Is like someone is successful, so what they do is right,
Mhm.
and it's like that that that's not always
Yep.
true. It's
Exactly.
like sometimes you just get I mean like so back I guess tying back to the whole like upbringing thing. So my dad used to play this song for us, and it's probably one of my like when my sister and I were growing up. he would play the song for us, and it's this author director, and he's giving like a graduation speech, and they kind of turned it into a song. And she would always play it for us and be like, "Guys, this is really how to like this gives you so much context into life as a whole. Like, really listen to this song." And when I was a kid, I hated it. I'm like, "Dad, this song sucks. Why am I listening to this? Why are you playing for this?" Like, he would play it, nearly every time we're in the car, at least once, or um and I grew up and I listened to the song and I'm like, man, this song is oddly prophetic. And it's weird how much I see the things that my dad was trying to point out when I was younger.
Mhm.
Um and I was fully on board with it. And one of the parts of that song is like he says this, he goes, your choices are 98% chance. So are everybody else's. And it's just like, I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yep.
I think, like I said, if you're given the same conditions as a lot of these people, you probably couldn't recreate their result, because a lot of how they got there is just like timing, or
Mhm.
they found the right person at the right time in their life that just
Yep.
happened to make it work. And like I said, there is some level of manufactured luck,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
This is like, you are doing things on a consistent basis that will set you up to where, when one of those things happens in your
Yep.
life,
Okay.
it's an immediate takeoff, right?
Yep.
If you're a content creator, maybe it's an interview that you have that all of a sudden spikes your viewership, and everyone starts to get to know you because of whatever type of thing. Um, there's different things in every industry that can kind of like give you that thing, and you can set yourself up for it over time, but it may never come.
Yeah.
It sometimes it's just throwing darts against a wall, and sometimes that guy gets it to stick and yours doesn't, and that's unfortunately part of life. Um, Also, why we probably need to be okay with failing,
Yep.
um, because that's how you learn, and that's how you take something going forward type of thing, right? It's like, you start doing a creative endeavor or whatever it may be, and you start doing it, you start getting into it, you're an amateur or whatever, and something happens, and you don't want to do it anymore. But you can take those skills over, and now you can, maybe you want to go edit videos because that's like semi-related, but that's more your speed, right? It's like, it's how you find those things that you're passionate about in life and that you actually want to pursue and everything. Um, and I think it's like it's there's a combination of like fear of trying new things, and like also a very high level of comfort in doing things that we know. Um, and I think it's really important to do the things that we know, when those are the things you want to do, right? Like you can try 80 different hobbies and still not find the one that clicks for you.
Yep.
Or you could try it on your first one and be like, man, I love rock climbing, and rock climbing is my life, and this is all I want to do. It's like, this is a niche sport, but it's like, if it's what your passion is, then that's what you need. Everyone should be on that quest to find whatever that passion is, whatever they're passionate about, or if it's passionate about things generally, they should understand that about themselves, because that's like it's probably the one thing that'll keep you going in life. And maybe your passion is like children, or passing on your seed, or raising the generation to be better than we are. And like, I think those are noble goals too. So I think there's room for all of those things in where we're going as a society, and we should encourage all of them too.
Yeah. I agree. I think to a certain extent, right, you got to have passion, purpose, and a lot of people don't know yet, but I always tell people too, is through failure, you also learn what you don't want, which is actually a really vital
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah,
Because sometimes it's just like, I don't know what I want to do. Well, you just haven't tried enough stuff out yet. Keep trying stuff out, right? You keep failing
yeah,
before you know it. Like, oh, there we go. That's the thing.
yeah,
And I've unlocked that too. It's funny because sometimes we think we know our purpose, but we only know part of our purpose. And I think about that with my last job. I think about that, and then just kind of doing something a little different, like podcasting or music, or just trying to do different things, and realizing that, yeah, like I'm finding more about, like, it's like more fine tuning on what I actually want for my purpose, which is
yeah.
pretty cool.
And that's like, yeah, like, I'm just like pro, especially for kids or whatever. Like, if you're a parent, throw everything at your kid. Like, I mean, be like, maybe we're like the most random niche stuff. Throw it at them, man.
Yep.
If you see him always doing some random thing, maybe like throw some Legos at him because they just want to build,
Mhm.
or I mean, whatever. Throw Lincoln Logs or any number of things. Like get him trying all the sports. I mean, get him trying squash or badminton, water polo. I mean, like there's so much diversity out there. And then when they like, but be okay with them being like trying it and be like, no,
Mhm.
that's not for me type of thing. Um, 'Cause they'll start to learn. They'll start to build like, okay, and you'll start to build your profile from a more macro level, right? So like this is something I've done for myself. So like I would say for me, the things that I always highly value or the things I look for in the things that I do in my like life or whatever, or my passion projects are all like very mentally challenging things. Like I like puzzles, I like to be challenged mentally or like things along those lines. And that's something that can apply to multiple different things, right?
Yep.
So when it comes to when we play board games with each other, it's like maximizing the economy of the game in terms of how it makes sense to do that to maximize your chances of winning, right?
Yep.
Like efficient use of because all games kind of boil down to the same thing, right? Is you have some sort of resource system, a resource generation system, and it's a balance of resource generation versus resource expenditure type of thing. And so it's just you're maximizing all these systems, right? It's just a giant puzzle of in terms of like what makes the most sense logically. Um, and so like it applies for you can apply that general passion to multiple things, right? So you could drop it into football and it's like coaching, right? It's talking about actual schematics of, oh, how are we actually getting people open and creating space for receivers and things like this, right? It's a very general thing that can apply to multiple, but sometimes it can be very specific as well, where it's like I just like climbing, right? It's not anything more, but a lot of times these things are there's like core aspects of these things that are going to be true across all of it.
Yep.
Like if you like climbing, maybe you like working with your hands, so you probably also like woodworking or things like that, right? So it's yeah, there's like I guess two levels of understanding. There's like the when you understand what specific things you like, and then there's the when you understand the core concepts of the things that attract you to things,
Agreed.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Agreed. Yeah, you hit two really good points there too. Like, because yeah, most things have a root cause to them, right? So it's like I like this, but it's not necessarily that you necessarily like it. It's usually something a little bit deeper that can go in any direction, right? So like creativity, I think is a great example. Like if you write songs, that creativity is probably going to translate to almost anything else you do creatively, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then you also mentioned something too about about throwing everything at kids, right? Just having them experience things. And I think that's how it should be, right? So if you think about when you're younger, the consequences for trying things are very low compared to when you're an adult. Like, say you had no experience as a kid and now you're trying to figure it out stuff as an adult. Guess what? There's higher levels of consequences to
yeah.
failure or things like that than as a kid. So I totally agree with that. It's just having your kid like creating them to get ready for the world, right? Just throw stuff at them, have them try new things. So that's a good.
Yeah. It's like it's so as I said, I went to college, never and don't actually use my college degree. So there's like obviously there's I think like growing discussions around like is college worth it or not and stuff. And it's like what was I gonna say? It's like I think that's one of like the main advantages of like college outside of the actual degree stuff is that like a general level of smart or general level of intelligence is good for an entire population, right? Like a general level of understanding about all things.
Yep.
And the best way to get a general understanding about all things is to try a lot of different things
Yep.
because you have a lot more perspective because you can come at it from like, oh, here's the basketball angle of this, but here's the football angle of this, but here's the, board game angle of this type of thing. Like you can come at a problem in a lot of different ways when you've experienced a lot of different things. Gives you a lot more perspective on life. So, and especially because like your brain is really spongy as a kid, right? It absorbs everything, even like even stuff they hear for like one time, it can still somehow live there. So it's like just shove as many little things in there as possible, and they'll pick out which ones they want to keep, right? Like which ones they're passionate about and things like that, and those will be the ones that grow. But they got to start there in the first place. So once we get older, our brains get it gets hard. It gets hard to learn things, man. We get bad at it. So I mean, this is, memory in a nutshell, right? You get more crystalline knowledge, like you become more of a memory bank as you are instead of like a processing unit type of thing, if that makes sense. Um, so try it when you're young. So at least that way, even if you don't do it for a lot of time when you're young, when you're older, there's at least that some level of connection there for you.
For sure. I've always been curious about that question too. How much do you think the factor of not being able to learn things is easy? How much do you think it is, yeah, just age and just getting older versus maybe just not continually challenging yourself to learn new things?
Yeah, so I think that's a big part, and this is why like I think in terms of like the whole college thing and stuff, it's like if you're challenging yourself to keep learning,
Mhm.
you don't necessarily need college because you're going to engage on those things on your own, right? Like you can take a similar approach to college as you do a trade or as you do anything, and you could be, I would say, just as, if not more, successful doing it that way, type of thing. But like, it manifests in different ways, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, if I'm an electrician, we'll say a blue collar job, right? If I'm an electrician and I'm always trying to do better, I'm essentially going to want every job that I go on to my craftsmanship should improve every single time, right? Like it's small things.
Yep.
It's like my screws are all turned in the same direction when I install, when I install plates. It's my cord management when I'm doing my like electrical wiring. It's how I'm doing the like wiring the circuit box and things like this. It's like you can tell a big difference between like I can put electrical work together and it's like I understand how like an electrical system works and it's going to be like clean, well maintained and super easy, right? Like these are two very different things and they're often two very different price points as
Yeah.
well because one will charge a lot because they're like I make good shit, man, like and the other one is going to you're going to get it very cheap, but you will pay for that cheapness in certain ways. So it's like that's the same mindset that a lot of people who or that like college is supposed to try and teach you, right? It's supposed to try and teach you like, hey, ask those questions, try and get better at those things, type of thing. But if you do have that on your own, you don't need it. The important thing is just have something like that you always want to do better at, or you always want to just keep progressing yourself in. I feel that's pretty much what I did, where it's like I got into the world of computers and more specifically data. And I just kept saying like, I want to do a little more with this. I want to do a little more with this. I want to do a little more with this. And by saying that, I naturally learned more things and more systems and more ways of thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So I like that. So you challenge yourself obviously each and every day to grow, and right, and I guess that's going to help maybe with that learning and development. But I also think too, what if you took that same person that's an electrician, like, okay, so you've done this for 3 years, now you're going to do carpentry. Like, what if you switched it that much? Do you think that would get the brain
Yeah.
working that right?
I think it's gonna all depend on the person,
Yeah, I
right?
know. Yeah, I'm just
It,
curious. Yeah.
because like if like I think depending on how much you challenge yourself to continually get better, will kind of affect how well you can take on new things, right? So it's like there, I think so, and it's very common in a lot of blue collar works that it's like a more seniority based system, right? Where it's like you have an apprenticeship.
Yep.
Your apprenticeship lasts for generally some longer period of time. It can be anywhere from like 2 to 5 years, I think. And then you actually come on and become a full tradesman. And then even after a longer period of time, begin that you can then become a journeyman or something like that after like 5 to 8 years. But it's still like these are very senior type things. But like I think if you're really challenging yourself, you can probably get to those points quicker and you can move on, if that makes sense. Like, I think you can, I'm not going to say
Yeah.
be a master electrician or whatever, but I think you can get 80% to where like you may not know it, but you know about everything kind of going on in that world. And you could easily move to carpentry because of like your, the basis in one helps the other, right? Or like your ability to work with your hands and your ability to like, your showing, because really a lot of this stuff is like attention to detail, right? It's like paying attention to the little things and considering like how you're doing affects the larger infrastructure of everything else, whether that's electrical, carpentry, I mean, anything, right? It's like you can think about it from a can I get it done to a how can I optimize this so it's like really clean, right? Or whatever it may be. So I think those are two very different things. And I think the reason why we don't have more of them is because we're not really great at allowing people to find their passions. Because we really only allow very traditional sets of passions, right? Like it's very hard for a lot of the people to do the fun stuff because it's hard to monetize it. Let's like I mean, we live in a capitalistic world. That's the nature of
Yep.
it. And it's like the the hobbies that most people enjoy are also the hobbies that are very hard to monetize, which means you generally can't do them successfully as a living, which I think is unfortunate.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, more of the reason why I was bringing that up about switching trades like that is I was just thinking about how, when we do the same things every day, we get in routine, we get the habit. And I have a feeling our brain, because like I feel like our brain just kind of automatically does things, right? We go on autopilot because we're just so used to the same stuff. So I was wondering, and I was just theory as you were talking, is just thinking about like, well, if you were to disrupt that, it doesn't have to be a new trade or job, maybe it could be a new game or something. If you were to disrupt that, would that create, right, that I guess you could say neuroplasticity? Would that like make you think different and keep that
Yeah,
from degrading, I guess?
yeah. I mean, I think if you have active engagements like
Yeah.
that frequently, it would definitely nothing's gonna be exact, right?
Yeah.
Like it will help,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's like you'll never like Father Time is undefeated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like no matter what, we we as humans have gotten so good at trying to tell Father Time and Death to fuck off
Yeah.
when like in reality it's like guys, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I just think about this sometimes where you have the really old people like your bodies are completely giving out on you. They're like, your heart's bad, your knees bad, your legs are bad, your back is bad, you're sick, you have and dementia, you have Alzheimer's, you're physically incapable, you're mentally incapable. It's like, guys, we because of modern medicine and like modern modern food, medicine, food, and like health in general have become so good that like we can make it to where we outlast our bodies. Like our bodies are basically like withering away and dying,
Yeah.
and we're like alive because we have such a strong understanding of like medical knowledge now at this stage in our career. So, I would I would say we probably shouldn't though. Like we just got to be okay. We don't all need to live to 90 or 100 or 105 or whatever. Like live a good life, live for whatever makes sense. But like I don't know, man. Like just living for the sake of living. It's like once your mind starts going or your body starts going, it's like why stick around type of thing. So
Yeah. But yeah, that's why I always get so curious about those like I understand like making healthy choices and habits, but I've also seen people that go way too into self maximizing where I'm always like, what type of
yeah,
life are you living just to potentially add
yeah,
maybe a couple of years? And that's taking
save a couple months.
exactly, and that's
It's
taking
like
everything
what?
else out of the equation. Like, what if you got in a car accident tomorrow and you passed away?
Yeah,
Would all of it be for
yeah,
nothing?
yeah. Exactly. It's like, man, it's like, it's great to say, it's like, oh, like, okay, so I'll use me as an example. So, like, my family has a history of heart
Uh-huh.
problems. My dad had a heart attack and triple bypass before he was 50. He had two more minor heart attacks and procedures after that in his early 50s, and now he's mid 60s or whatever. He's also had, I believe, another one, and so he knew for 15 years that he needed to be healthier.
Uh-huh.
But even after his his triple bypass and all that stuff, I mean, man, this guy's still eating fast food every day, McDonald's, KFC, like he's just straight pounding it, man. And I'm like, dude, like I mean, you ain't paying for it now, but like you're
Yeah.
going to, but like there is a balance,
Yeah.
right? It's like you don't like you could also walk outside and then some dude rolls down the street and just hits you and you die,
Yeah.
and it's like that's great that I was eating salad every day of the week, but I could have been eating a big fat burger that would have tasted much better, and I was gonna get run over anyways. So it's like, it's
Yeah.
there's a balance. Like you should always keep the things that you enjoy, but like there's you want to mitigate the easy risks, right? Like I'm health conscious
Yeah.
now, or heart conscious in
Exactly.
terms of, just because it's like it runs in my family, and that scares me, man. I don't want to fall the same things. Going back to the whole like evolution thing, right? It's like I firmly like so if I get better about like make a bunch of heart healthy choices and then I pass it on, right? Like we've just made a better human type of thing.
Exactly. Yep.
You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So it's like this is where it's like so I have a very long view of this as well, because I think doing stuff like that is how we advance society as a whole, right? Because now it's like all the humans that come from my lineage or whatever you want to call it or whatever now don't have those heart issues because of choices that I've made in my life. So
Exactly.
um, it's a
It is.
balance. It's a balance, right? It's like, I mean, sometimes I just on this regard, it's also being kind to yourself. So like, if you're living healthy and you want to scarf down a pizza every now and then, it's like, go for it, man.
Exactly.
If if like if you want your dinner to be a pint of Ben and Jerry's ice cream, it's like, maybe you run a little longer at the gym that day or whatever it is, type of thing. So
Exactly.
uh yeah,
Yeah.
balance in all things.
Exactly. Okay. So let's go to the next question. So, what's the biggest
Okay.
struggle that you've made it through?
I don't know. I guess it'd be if I don't know. I feel like all of them are kind of in like the same category, I
Yeah.
guess. They're all about the same. So I don't know if it would be any one in particular. This feels more like a like you have like a list, right? Like there's like almost like tiers of like tiers of things that have happened to you that have developed you into who you are, right?
Yep.
And then in the top one, there's a lot. There's like the things like your core characteristics. There's certain things in your life that have made your core characteristics in you,
Yep.
and how do you pick which one of those is like the best? Like how do you pick which one of your core characteristics was the most influential in your life? So I feel like that's a hard choice.
Yeah.
There's probably like two or three that I would say like I find I really love. So I guess I'll give you one of
Let's go.
those, and if we want to go into all the other ones, we can. But I think my favorite one is I I I'm not going to say complete, but I would say I am one. I try and be one of the most objective people in the world, like literally down to a T of like of objectivity, I guess. I think that's like one of my strengths. So I think it helps me for like self-analyzing, and I also think it helps me for uh treating the world for what it is. I try very hard to separate from everything else besides like universal truths, because I think every situation and every person, every interaction, every relationship should always come down to just what is the universal truth of it. And in that situation, there is like a right, a wrong, and then there's something where we don't know. And in that area of we don't know, we should be making some decision on it, going back to the whole indecision thing. We should be making a decision on it and then evaluating if that decision is correct, right? Um, we can have data to support it either way. And if it's a thing where it's like it could be bad, it could be good, we should just do something and then evaluate if something actually achieves the goal that we want to get towards.
And that was the biggest struggle that you made it through?
Oh no, 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 no. No, 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 no. So I think it's related to it.
Okay.
Is what I'm trying to
Yep.
say. Uh, and why it's related to it is because I would say probably my biggest struggle in my entire life, if I had to boil it down to one archetype, is my dad. So, and all that the objectivity thing comes from him, and so do most of my other core characteristics somehow draw back to my dad. Yeah. And there's a lot of stories around that, I guess. And so, like, normally all of my core characteristics come from a story about my dad. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So which one in particular? I guess it depends on which characteristic you want to know about.
Well, whatever you feel like talking about, it's all up to you.
I mean, I don't care about talking about any of it, I guess. So, yeah. Let's see. Basically, like a lot of who I am, I always say this, that it's like, I looked at what my dad did and I told myself to do the exact opposite.
Okay.
So I like one thing that's a very, very important characteristic of who I am is being empathetic and like understanding people's circumstances and how it can be different than yours, and how everyone is on a slightly different journey, and like most people end up about in this we all end up about in the same area. Some people just get there in much different ways. um I don't think my dad has a shred of empathy, and I think that a lot of the things that when I was growing up, I didn't realize that he was as unempathetic or as hateful as he was. And then as I grew up and I could more clearly see him for all of his actions and who he was, and actually like formulate how people are or how they act, I realized that he just had there was none of that none of that in him. So this goes, like I said, this is like one of the core experiences or whatever that kind of shaped me and gave me like my compassion. And it's another one of the things that I consider a core characteristic, and one of the things that I absolutely love about myself is that I I know that there are going to be situations or experiences that I will never have experiences and I may never get to. But that doesn't that though all of those, it should be even more reason why I should be listening to people who have gone through it. Um so yeah, so I guess so that's one core, very very core big one. Um and a lesser one, like he's the reason why I don't drink, pretty much. Like, I very very rarely drink. It was not something that I was ever too concerned in. I avoided parties even in my college years and everything, and still to this day largely do. So my dad had issues with that, as did his dad before it. So kind of, you got to break the generational cycle of some of this stuff. So both me and I guess my sister, really, we just don't really do alcohol because of that. And we can definitely attribute that to my dad, once again, because there were multiple events involving alcohol in our life with him. Um, of varying levels of impact on what they did to our psyche as children. Um, yeah, and then yeah. So I'd say those are a few, at least. I don't want to. I don't know if it's worth to get into all of them, but those are like the few that come off the top, right off the top of my head.
Well, for sure. And you hit a good point too. Is like a lot of times the life lessons we learn sometimes aren't from what people did well. Sometimes it's what people didn't do well, and it kind of gives us that nudge, like, well, I don't want to be like that. And I'm thinking about a
Yeah.
few times in life where, whether it be work or whatever, like just in certain circumstances, where actually that was the motivation to do better, was just the fact that it was so bad, right? Yeah.
This is like so this is something that I firmly believe in, is that like a lot of kids, like in our generation and really just in general, um are going to encounter very very similar stimulus in their life.
Mhm.
Like, you will encounter very similar situations that your parents did or that other kids in your generation are experiencing, type of thing. And how we respond to those stimulus shapes a lot of who we are as a person,
Yep.
right? Like, it's very easy for me to see, and this is why I go back to the whole like I am very lucky thing,
Mhm.
is like my dad's an alcoholic. I had a lot of issues with my dad around alcohol growing up. I I could have just been like, I could have fell into that,
Exactly. Yeah, some people do.
Um, I like, and so like with one small shift, with one, if my response to those incidents in my life where that happened was this is how I should behave, then my whole course of my life could be vastly different, right? We're talking like, you know, multiverse almost type of thing, right? When people talk about like every decision you don't make creates basically a fragment of your current universe or whatever type of thing. So it's like if I made the opposite choice there, like my life would be in a completely different spot, right? I mean, I don't know, like I guess that's where it goes back to the whole lucky thing. It's like everyone encounters hardships, and sometimes our hardships get the better of us. So, um, but going back to the whole like long journey thing, I think if people are trying, people are trying to improve, even if you stumble, even if you fall, I think you can always get back. Everyone loves a good redemption story.
Exactly.
So,
Okay. Cool. Let's see. Let's go to the next one. So, what's something that you're currently going through that's either positive or negative?
sorry, what's what?
Something that you're currently going through that's positive or negative.
I think you should do one for each, but
Yeah, if you want to.
anyways, uh, I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I'm actually good at life.
Yeah.
Does that make like
Elaborate.
the things that make the things that make us human and people, and the things that make life good or make life livable or worthwhile. I think I have a pretty good grasp on those things, I guess. So I feel like that's a positive, really big positive. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, things like, I mean, this is everything, right? It's like mental health, financial health, physical health, uh, and just things like that. My creative side, my intellectual side, my social side, my emotional side, all feel like they're pretty well, they're pretty happy
Yeah.
type of
Okay.
thing, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, um, on the negative side, I really don't. I mean, like I said, I feel very very lucky. I feel like I'm more. I, everyone's gonna have negatives or things to bitch about, no matter what. But in the grand scheme of things, I really can't, and I feel like I'm more in the position of like, uh, I have a lot, and I want others to like be able to experience what I experience. So I may have small gripes with things, but I don't really have too many negatives in my life right now.
Okay. Good. Well, that's a good place to be in, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, who is someone who's changed your life that doesn't know it?
my dad probably knows it. My mom probably does it. Yeah, I guess I'd go with my mom. Yeah, probably. Because my mom's not a very emotional person, so like she doesn't have the emotional complexity to have like talks about feelings.
Yeah.
Um, so that just doesn't really happen. Or like the most you'll get is if like if you're in a bad mood, she just won't like she'll stop talking to you type of
Yeah.
thing. Like she won't try and engage the
Yeah.
conversation, But also if you're super happy, she's not going to be super happy with you. She's going to be like, "Oh, that's good for you." Like
Yeah.
there's like my mom is not a very emotional person. She is very like
Yeah.
emotionless, I would say generally.
Yeah.
Um and and the other thing is that like she is a worrier. So like if things break, she freaks. Like if something's wrong with her house, she's losing her mind. Like all sense of rationality is thrown out the thing. Like she doesn't have like it's almost like an ability to quick process
Mhm.
situations and like identify what's the best way forward. Like, oh, like with life stuff, like my car just got broken into. What do I do? Like the actual process of working through like what are the steps of what I should do in this situation? She just like loses it. She can't perform under pressure. Basically, is type of thing. She doesn't do well with like new situations. She's very much like a status quo person, and I think that I don't think she realized that that's why I try so much, and I'm also also why I'm so emotional type of thing. Like I'm like very I'm a very emotions forward person. Like I will tell you exactly how I'm feeling at any point in time if you ask for it, and even sometimes when you don't. Um, and I get that because I saw her not give any emotions, and I'm like, it's very hard to know if you do something and the person is not excited for you or not happy for you or not upset with you or just gives no emotional feedback, you don't know if you're doing something wrong or if you're doing something good.
Yep.
And I'm like, it's very hard to know because I get no emotional feedback type of thing. Like, I don't know what you're feeling, and I need to know this so that way I know if I'm supposed to do this or not type of thing. Um, so yeah, I learned that from her. I don't think she realizes it. Um, yeah, I guess that's another core characteristic, and another one that's like learning by what someone doesn't do,
Exactly.
or what they do, and why you don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, her.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so what's a skill or talent that you'd like to share?
I don't know if I have anything great. I'm like exceptionally mediocre.
Okay, explain.
That's like this is that that's like I mean that's where I put
Yeah.
myself with pretty much with every aspect in my life. That's my cap, you know. So I think about this like um I'm not saying it's all genetics or anything, but it's like your genetics predispose you to certain things, right? And then the rest of it is your own hard work and then luck as well.
Yep.
Are kind of like your three factors, right? And it goes back to the whole like manufactured luck, right? It's like um, when you have all of the genetics, the physical aspects or whatever that gear you towards a certain thing, you have just manufactured some level of luck in terms of what it is, right? If you're 4'11" as a guy, you might want to look into being a horse jockey because that's like probably what you're going to go into, right? Or maybe wrestling, like you can wrestle the 100 pound division or whatever type of, right? Like
Yep.
you, your body and your genetics predispose you to certain things or give you some level of manufactured luck in certain things, right? Um, this is why like if you look at any Olympic athletes, they all have like body stereotypes to them, right? Like all your water or your swimmers have like long legs, short torsos because like that creates more propulsion, so they can normally swim faster. Michael Phelps or whatever, like his body didn't produce lactic acid, so his body didn't tire down, right? It's like these are things where you have manufactured luck in certain areas of your life. The other area of manufactured luck, right, is like skill, practice, et cetera, type of thing. Um, and so that's the part that you can control, right? That's the part where you can go and work every day. But each one of these things, and the last one, like I said, is luck, is like sometimes you just get in better scenarios or you're put in the right situations that um, enhance your skills or hide your weaknesses. But each one of these on their own only gives you part of it, right? Like if you have no genetics, all hard work and practice, you're capped. There's a certain cap that because someone will be out there who has the genetics and who has the hard work that you did. And you'll always have that disadvantage. It's like you can compete, but there'll always be that gap, right? So this is like the difference between like stars and superstars, right? The difference between like a Drew Holiday in the NBA and LeBron, right? Like Drew Holiday's a star. He's probably one of the best players in the league now, right now. He just went to the Olympics, et cetera, et cetera. But he's not LeBron James, right? Like they're not even in the same stratosphere, and it's because of differences in those things.
Okay. Makes sense. So then, skills or talents, you're just exceptionally mediocre, huh?
Yes, exceptionally mediocre because I'm I would say like a decent blend, like physical side, not a lot of great skills there. Did not come from a family with a great physical skill set. Like I am probably one of the most physically capable people from my family, and that's saying something because I'm not. Um, but I think I make up for it a lot because of like my mental side of things. Like I understand how games work or how sports work or how strategy works,
Yep.
to where like I can I perform over my physical attributes because I can understand the more mental sides and the mental nuances of it. And then I will say the other thing is that um I'm gonna try to make a joke. I got that dog in me, man. When I try something, I don't know how to when I'm competing, I don't know how to like stop, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm playing basketball, I will just keep running no matter what. Like I will always run the court. Like I'm always hustling type thing. You know, it's like typical white guy always hustling type behavior or whatever. But I'm like that with like everything. Soccer, I'm hustling to every ball. It's like I know I don't have the physical skills, so I make up for it with a lot of hard work and a lot of like I can understand the strategy of how to play the game type of thing.
So then you'd say a skill or talent would be strategist and strategy, huh?
Yes, yeah, I get that's like
Yeah.
yeah, and I use that to make up for my glaring lack of physical ability.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, hey, being a strategist is a good thing.
yeah. Well, I'll be the first person people come to in wartime, but also probably the first piece and that person everyone throws under the bus when it's needed. So
There you go. Okay. So, what is something you're learning about currently that you'd like to teach us?
let's see. I'm I don't know if I'm not at a spot to teach it right now because I'm still in the early phases of learning it.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say working with large scale AI models is probably up there.
Okay.
Um, that's definitely something that is like I'm in the process of learning about, I guess is what I should say. But I don't have a strong understanding of it right now to the point of where I could teach it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I guess that's the main thing. I am trying to learn how to be a better runner, but that's like an ongoing struggle.
Yeah.
And not something that I could teach anyone because I'm bad at it still. So yeah, I guess yeah, I don't have anything that's like at that level, you
Yeah.
know, where like I just learned it enough where I could actually teach something about it. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say so nothing right
Well,
now.
what's a little nugget? You got a little nugget about that that's just really informative and neat?
Um, I say this to all my friends all the time, or I try and make them realize this. Like th- this is a meme, guys. And I mean this in the best sense. Like AI is very powerful. It is not some all-encompassing thing that just can do everything right now, right off the bat.
Mhm.
Most of these things are not what they say they are.
Okay.
They're just not, and it like you see it. It bugs me so much now. So like I went out. I actually just a couple weekends ago um went out with some friends and we were going to see a movie. And we were having conversations about like AI in the workplace and stuff like that. And like our company starting to use it. What are they using it on? How does it work? Yada, yada, yada. And I just get frustrated having some of these conversations with people who kind of hear it through like news outlets or who like, you know, through the grapevine type of thing. Because it's like, uh, and because like everyone and their mother says they have it and they're using it and they're doing it and like it's not all these use cases are just like often not true AI or they're not actually doing the things that they're really saying they're doing. They're doing like a fake way to get there type of thing. And when we went to the movie, they show the commercials or whatever, and like 70% of the commercials are something about AI, like Samsung with AI assistant. And I'm like, I'm like, I about lost it because literally on the way to the movie we were talking. I was telling them how like, dude, AI is not what they say it is, and like half of these things aren't even true AI, but they say that they are just because it's like a buzzword now. And yeah, and it was just funny seeing this all in commercials where I'm like, yep, there you go, everyone's doing AI. Yep, we're already here, guys. AI revolution. I'm like, oh, it's just it's much further off. It's much further off than what people say it is, and there's still a lot of there's still a very key problem with it, and it's one of the key problems that they've kind of known about since the advent of this type of technology. So
Yeah. Interesting. So, how much do you think that fear comes from, like, movies and pop culture? Do you think it comes from just the futuristic thinking of like, well, it's not there yet, but it's going to be? Like, what? I mean, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's it's two different
Hmm.
mindsets, and I think a lot of that I think a lot of that mindset is like uh, a very core part of humans in general, because it very much goes to what you're comfortable doing and what you're comfortable allowing, type of thing. Um, and what I mean by that is that, like, the one thing that you can never stop is progress. It's impossible. You can make it go slower, but you will never stop it. There will always be someone out there who will try and push the barriers of what we can do, either as humans, physically, or as humans mentally, or what we can create. And there are people who want to progress AI at a very, very fast pace. And they want to be at the end right now, type of thing. They're thinking about it as a sprint, which is very common in a capitalistic society. I will say that's a whole side story, but it's very common because everyone can see the power of what it can do and how much. I mean, if we're just being honest, money that it can save, or things like that. Um, and those people will always try and keep pushing the high end, or like keep pushing to where it could go. But the issue is they're going to keep pushing even if they're on unsteady ground, right? They're okay with building a house on mud, and even though it may rain in 10 days, type of thing. Um, that's kind of the mindset, and someone will always do it because it can very well it could very well lead to like the breakthrough that does it all, right? And if you are the person that does like figure it out at the scale, you will be very, very heavily compensated for it. I'm sure of that. I mean, you already see that a lot now. Um, but it, in the reality of it, like from people who interact with it or who are adjacent to things that are doing this type of stuff, it's just it cannot do anywhere near what they're claiming it can do. And for what it needs to get to, for what a lot of people want it to be, it needs kind of a major revolution, because it goes back to, like I said, there's this core problem that has largely been around since the advent of these types of things, and it's still, we don't have great answers for it yet. And until there's great answers for that, the whole ship will not move into that space. I don't think, at least. I could be wrong on that one, but my personal belief is it won't. But I mean, it could. I mean, who knows? Eventually, someone will solve it. It's just a matter of who's going to get there first.
Yeah. Okay. So you think it's potentially far off then from being what they say it's going to be?
Yeah, it's just it's far off from like it will completely take over all jobs, type of
Yeah,
thing.
which makes
There are there are a lot of jobs that could immediately almost get cut, um, or get heavily aggregated to AI systems. Um, that will 100% happen. And yeah, so like there will definitely be a large job shift um, from it. Um, I'm personally scared at what that job shift will do to people.
Mhm.
Um, I'm very concerned about that. Very, very concerned about that. Uh, but I'm not too concerned about it like automating everyone out of a job
Yeah.
at this point. Just certain things.
Yeah. No. No.
But I would argue that the things that it's automating. So this is where I was talking about, like, I'm concerned for this, is that what's going to happen is the people who own the companies that are doing AI work will reap a lot of the benefits, but we're going to we're going to have another huge wealth consolidation because of it. Because we as Americans do not have rules put in place to where the benefits of AI will ever really be achieved by most people. What will happen is because it's all it's capitalist, so it's capitalism.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm gonna sound like a guy. I'm gonna sound like a socialist here, but let's just be real. What it is like the Microsofts and Amazons and wherever of the world are going to own all of these systems that are going to be so much more efficient than everything else for the certain tasks that it can do well. That like they will be able to have so few people responsible for so much work because of these because of these systems in certain sectors and in certain areas, and it's going to concentrate wealth at the heads and the boards of all of these companies that have these things, and all the people who are going to be displaced by this type of shift are not going to get any sort of back compensation or any sort of help to get them to a better spot, when we should all be celebrating the fact that we now have to do less, or that we can do things better. Like, there's so much room for improvement in that space, but we're only going to really focus on like getting the capital and getting it concentrated, and it's going to all the money from all of this is going to go towards a very small select group of people, and we're going to have a bigger an even larger wealth gap than we do now, and it's going to get worse because I've unless you need some rules around capitalism for it to work effectively, I guess. Because when the only name of the game is making more money and producing more profit, and all of that money and profit going to the people who own things, the people who own these systems will have all of the money, and everyone else will largely be broke. And there's going to be a tipping point to where people can no longer afford a lot of these services just because they're essentially priced out of them. Uh, yeah. When I don't know, we should be using that money to encourage people to do things that they're passionate about now, because we no longer need certain jobs. Have those people, endeavor on creative creative endeavors, or whatever it may be. Start a business, start a podcast, pick up an instrument. Who know? I mean, any number of things. We should be encouraging more of those things instead of encouraging just more work on more work on more work on more work.
Yeah. So if that's the case, if something like that happens, I mean, do you feel like the solution is to have people covered as far as like get a certain amount of money to where that covers survival and everything they need essentially so they can pursue those passions? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, so, so it's kind of it's a tough question, of course.
Yeah,
Um, that essentially gets into like universal basic
exactly.
income and things along those
Yeah,
lines. Yeah. Um, I don't think that that's what it needs to be. If you, it just, it's some combination of money and or services
yeah,
is essentially what it is.
yeah.
There should be a certain level of money and or services, right? Maybe that's not you get paid every month,
Oh,
but maybe it's you like free college or healthcare or something like
yep,
that. Um, Things like that. Socializing those things, I think, goes a long way towards enabling those types of things, because it sets up a minimum standard of living that that you aren't reliant on doing certain jobs. You can work part time. You can work 10, 15, 20 hours a week and pursue being a musician or something along those lines, because you need to make less money because your healthcare is paid for, or your transportation is paid for because you have public transit that's super cheap and super accessible, or your schooling is paid for. So hey, you don't have to worry about saving your entire life so you can actually go to college because it's already paid for. So some combination of services and or like UBI would be how I would probably do it. I would lean more towards services because services require um, skin in the game. They require you to do work still, right?
yeah,
Like, if you want free healthcare, you still have to go in and put in for your
yep,
appointments, and you still have to go in and get everything scheduled. you still have to be an active participant in it to be in the healthcare system. Same with school, right? You have to choose to go to school. You have to choose what major you're going to go to. So you're actively choosing things. Situations in which both parties have some skin in the game is when you're going to produce the best results. Um, so that's why I tend to lean more towards like providing a more diverse like service catalog as compared to just giving people straight money, because generally that has a pretty negative connotation to it. Although I will say Alaska been giving people free money every year, and Alaska is a deeply red state, so like they're on board for it too. It's not like I'm doing some socialism stuff. Really in reality, it's not stuff like this is not socialism,
Yeah.
because it's not socialism when you're getting money.
Yeah.
And then when everyone else is getting money, then it's socialism.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always find that funny. As long as someone else is getting, if you're getting the free money, it's fine. If you're not, then why are we giving people free money?
Yeah. I
So
gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I've just been, I mean, it's an interesting thing, man. I don't think, like, I mean, in all of human history, as far as we know, nobody's been in this predicament, right? So it's interesting to think about, like, yeah, so what is the way forward with this, with AI? And yeah, maybe it's far off from it, but at the same time, like, thinking a little bit in the future of, like, yeah, that will be a huge market shift, or a lot of people lose their jobs. So how do we combat that without just having people, starving essentially all the time or without work? So it's interesting.
yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, it's gonna create a further striation of like upper 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 class, middle class, and then poverty type of thing.
Exactly.
Like it's gonna accentuate that even more as we go down this road, because we encourage people to own capital, to own things, to own machines, to own cars, to own houses, to own warehouses, to own trucks, to own inventory. Um, and the people who own the capital essentially have the power under this system, or have the money under this system.
Yep.
Um, so that part's going to get worse unless we actually set up some things to where it can grow in a manner that we can all reap the benefits of it.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so what are you doing for fun right now?
Oh, I just started playing a game called Pokemon Infinite Fusion.
Okay, what is that?
It's so it's like a whole it's like if you ever played Red and Blue and Yellow way back in the 90s on like the Game Boy type of thing. Um, well, so it's Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow are like the originals. So you had like Charizard, all them or whatever. Well, they basically took these guys basically took that, and they imported a bunch of like custom images and stuff like this, and they made it to where you can use Pokemon together. So like you can fuse a Charizard and a Venusaur, and you get a Charsaur or something like that. Um, and so like it's a custom image and all this type of stuff. Anyways, it's very nostalgic for me, and it's very cool because you get to put these two little creatures together, and they become one, and then they look super cool and stuff like that. So yeah, that's actually been kind of like my current addiction, basically, is that.
Nice.
So
You always like character creation. Is that always something you're into?
yeah. I mean, it goes back to the whole like mental like strategy thing. Like most of the things I enjoy are like deck building and planning and things like that. Like nearly all the games I play they're more heavy on the thinking side of things and less on the like. I got no hands, man. I got no hands. Okay, so it's mainly on the thinking side. So strategy games, RTSs, auto battlers, card games, things like that. Things that are like more thinking based are normally where I cut my teeth for games.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm the same way. But I like a mix of both, though. Every once in a while, it's fun to play a mindless game, but for the most part, yeah, there's got to be some strategy or some type of, you know, thing behind it. So,
yeah, yeah. Me too. Every time I've tried playing like games like quick twitch games, I'm just so much worse than everyone
really?
else. So yeah, goes back to the whole
Uh,
exceptionally mediocre athletic career. I just like so I compete on the mental side. I don't compete too much on the physical side.
that's funny. See, I live in both worlds, and that's what makes it really interesting and tough sometimes, actually, because it's like I struggled so long with knowing what I wanted to do for that fact. It's like, well, I have this athletic ability, but then I also have this intellectual ability, and they're both kind of different, but could be the same depending on what you do. It's really interesting. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a healthy mix of both, right? Sometimes like if you have both, it's like you have the flexibility of kind of going back and forth between them,
yeah,
like sometimes you can rely more on your intellect and your like planning,
yeah,
and other times you can rely on just your raw ability, right? So
exactly. Yeah. Sometimes you get paralysis though. Too many options.
yeah. So I mean, so this is very common. It's like it's common in both regards,
Yeah,
right? Where like if you're a very physically, let's say you're a very physically blessed person, and people are telling you to be mental, you trying to change over your mindset of like how you're going to attack someone physically, like maybe it's like how am I going to break them down and get past them in football,
yeah,
or in basketball it's how am I going to break this guy down and turn him around, or break his ankles, whatever type of thing. It's like if you make very talented physical players have to be very mental, oftentimes it can ruin their game because they're so caught up trying to be, calculating and a tactician, when in reality they just need to dominate them with their physical ability. And like the same thing, right? Whereas like if you're, like let's do basketball again. I like
mhm,
basketball a lot. If you're a very crafty dribbler and stuff, but you're not a very like, fast or, powerful dribbler, it's like you win not by, blowing by someone. You win by like crafty handles, manipulating them with your eyes and your feet
yeah,
and stuff like that. It's like two different mindsets. And if you're telling that player, oh, just blow by him, or whatever, it's like they can't, man. It's like they don't,
mhm, yeah,
it can very much like it can ruin their mindset, right? Because they're like, oh, I shouldn't think about it, but in reality, they're the type of player that needs to think about it, right?
yeah,
So you have that block of like which aspect of myself do I use?
yeah. No, agreed. And it's funny because it's like it's just a different set of issues, right? So like think about it. You mentioned earlier someone was born, they're 4'11", they have, whatever they have, right? That kind of narrows the field on what they're going to focus on. So they're like, hey, I have like just a few little things that I can dabble with, so I'm going to put all my energy into that. And it's like that's actually not easy per se, but it's like okay, so you have choice. But then when you have it wide open, it's like okay, I could do this, or this. What do I do? And it's almost like a
Yeah.
whole different set of things. So it's funny that's never talked about though, and I'm sure there's plenty of people to be like, oh, stop complaining. You're good at a lot of stuff, but it's just a different set of issues. It's funny.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, it's like a different problem, because it's like the person who is very physically limited knows exactly where they can get better, right?
Exactly.
Because they're
Yeah.
like, I know I'll never be able to out jump him,
Yep.
but I can develop, 5 post moves that will let me get by him every single
Yeah.
time.
Exactly.
Whereas the person who could blow by him is like, oh, I could blow by him, or I could do a spin through the legs over the back. Like I have so many more options available to me. It becomes almost like a analysis paralysis, right? It's like
Exactly.
I have so many choices, I don't know what I'm gonna do type of thing. And a lot of athletes will talk about this too, right? Where they say they're like, I just need to go. I just need to go play. I just need to go play. Right? They're like, I need to stop thinking about playing or thinking about what I'm doing, and just let my instincts or how I know how to play the game take over, type of thing. And then there's other people who are the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, you know, and then you get people who are really really good at both, right? Like they have all the physical stuff, and then they're able to stay focused enough on certain things to where like they have all those skills too. And it's like, okay, well now we witness the greats,
Yeah.
the Michael Jordans, the Tom Brady's, the Patrick Mahomes, I guess
Yeah.
you probably put up there as well. So
Exactly.
Sidney Crosby's maybe.
Yeah. It's like they found the thing that they were designed specifically to do, right? You know, like
Yeah,
Michael Phelps
yeah, it's
swimming,
like
right? Michael Phelps decided to play basketball, he would not be very good, right? Or like he wouldn't be
yeah,
professional,
yeah,
but he
yeah,
put him in the right circumstance, and then there you go.
yeah, yeah. It's like Bruce Lee, right? So is it? I fear not a man who has practiced 10,000 punches, but the man who has practiced one punch 10,000 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So it's like, yeah.
so true. Okay, so we've obviously covered quite a bit today. So if you were to create a book or a story of your life so far from the beginning to now, what would you call that story?
I don't know, probably something like super corny and self-helpy, like a journey of self-improvement or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, probably something like that, and then go into like the things that happened in my life and how they molded me, or how or what I took from them, or how I tried to improve from them, type of thing. You know,
Okay.
relationships, physical stuff, emotional stuff, trauma, parental stuff, um, all those types of things, and just like the things that I've learned from them, or how I've grown as an individual,
Dang.
something like
So a
that.
journey of self improvement, huh?
Yeah, a journey of self
Okay,
improvement.
that's gonna be the
We're
that'll
all
be the
we
thumbnail.
should all be on we should all be on one.
It's true. It's true. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got two questions left. So one, this is kind of like your opportunity right now to share anything you want with the audience. So if there's anything you want to talk about that we didn't talk about, this is your chance. If there's anything you want to market, if you want to throw out your social media or whatever, just connect. This is kind of like that time. So is there anything you want to add?
No, I mean I don't. I mean I have a very very narrow, if any, social media presence whatsoever.
Okay.
So that will probably change in the future, for very particular reasons. But I don't have anything to share in that regard right now. But I would say just everyone who listens or whatever, just like whatever you're doing, and not it doesn't have to be for everything, but anything that you want to take on in your life, just try and be marginally better at it over and that's over
Yep.
time. Um, because it's hard to improve. It's impossible to improve every day, but it is like the very slow acts of just doing it on a regular basis create the habits. So if it's going to the gym, just go. Like even if you don't do anything, go walk. If go to the gym, and if you're not feeling it, walk for a little bit, and that's fine. If that's all you can do for the first 3 months, that's fine. Eventually, you'll be there and be like, oh, I could walk a little longer, or I could go a little faster. If it's pursuing learning something, it's you can start extremely, extremely small. This is how you build habits, right? Just start very small. So, uh, work on improving and find a habit that you want to do that for, and be kind to people, because everyone's on some type of journey like that, and they may be at a different spot than you are, and that's okay.
Yeah, I like that. No, you're so right, right? It's all about incremental changes, right? That's what builds sustainability. So you can actually sustain the growth, and it's long lasting change. I think what we see a lot of times is people go too much too soon. Also, you'll see that where either people don't try because they're like, oh, I'll never get there, or it's like, okay, I'm going to ramp it up 50%. I'm going to ramp it up 100%. And before you know it, it's not sustainable. And then after 2, 3 weeks, like, okay, I'm done, right?
Yep.
But if you think
Yeah.
about it, like, yeah, 1% better. If you're 1% better every day, I mean, by the end of the year, you're 365% better than you were when you started. And that's saying something. That's pretty good.
Actually, more than 365%. That's called compound
There you go.
interest, because 1%, and then you have 1% of the 101% now. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? And
Yeah.
then it's
So it's even
compounding
more.
percents on each
Look
other.
at
So,
that.
um, yeah, that's like, you apply the financial markets to your life, and all of a sudden you got big your self stonks go through the roof.
Yeah. No, you're right. I've heard that too. I've heard that that growth doesn't work like that. It doesn't work linear. A lot of times it works like this and then skyrockets, right? Because of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yep. Yep.
You sound like a
Big breakthroughs and
there you
plateaus.
go. Yeah, I was gonna say that was definitely a data engineer answer for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're to the last part. So how I like to end these calls is I like to have the guest create a question. So the last guest created a question for you. So we will answer that one first. Then you get to create a question for the next guest. So
Okay.
let's see. So last guest question was, if you could be any animal, what would you want to be?
I have this is I'm gonna throw this for a loop here. Can we be fake animals? Like, do they have to be real?
They didn't specify. So how about let's go fictional first then if you want to, and then we can go real.
Okay. Fictional is a phoenix for
Okay?
sure.
Why?
Phoenix is by far the coolest fictional creature ever. Uh, the whole idea of the phoenix is pretty much exactly like what we're talking about, right? So like a phoenix when it dies, it bursts into ashes, and then it essentially hatches from the ashes type of thing.
Mhm.
It's what life is, right? You try something, you fail, or maybe you succeed, who knows? And then those experiences birth a new version of yourself type of thing. So I think it's a beautiful way of representing like samsara, the cycle of life, death, and
Mhm.
rebirth. If you're talking more like Buddhist type principles, which I'm kind of a fan of, and just like that whole process though of just like taking whatever it is in the Phoenix's current life and goes, oh, I died from this. Well, now I'm smarter in in this next iteration of myself, type of thing. So
Like
it's
I like
a
that.
it's a cool way to go about it. Plus, it can fly. It's got like it's got fire, always a good power. And there's big ranges, like they range from like the little small ones you see in like Harry Potter to like ginormous phoenixes type of thing. So I think that's also the pretty sweet as well.
True.
So,
So, question for you:
so that's
Do you
that.
think a phoenix is lonely because it is on fire all the time?
No, I would think was it. There's probably some like another creature that can be friends with it, right?
Not very
It'd have
many.
to be like
You'd be killing everybody.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, there's like what is it? Flame has like it's like a balance thing, right? Like it needs water. It would need water. As someone like a water based creature or
Ooh.
something like
Okay.
that. It could be friends with that, right? So they would make steam with each other.
So there we go. Let's make steam. I like.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's your real animal then?
Um, Probably like an elephant.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's just like what comes to my mind. Like super smart creature, super like they're obviously like ginormous and could like crush just about anything, but they're also like very docile, right? Like they're not angry individuals. They're just vibing all on their own. They're very smart but very powerful. It's kind of like the quintessential stereotype of like the strong silent type of thing.
Mhm.
Elephant doesn't get too angry. You can't really piss it off. But man, if you do, it like 4,000 pounds or however big an elephant is, just right on your sternum,
Yeah.
collapsed, man.
Yeah.
I don't trust a lot of animals against an angry elephant, like a full grown one. But it's also not one to like go out and try and pick fights or anything now either. He's just minding his own, chilling, trying to learn about the world. And but if you anger him, cave your chest in.
Does that sum you up? Is that you?
It's like what I would like to
Oh.
be, right? Like there's no way it would actually be me. Like I would love to like hope or be like if push came to shove, I would be some like every guy has some delusion of grandeur that like push come to shove, they'd be some hardcore badass. Jason Statham, like going through the place, knocking armed guys
Yeah.
out and shooting people and being like Chuck Norris or
Yeah.
some shit like that. It's like every guy has some
Yeah.
delusion of grandeur that would be them. Like sure, like I would love that. That would be great. I just know it's probably not gonna happen. So it's like
Yeah.
I can admire like that archetype though. It's like the you know slow to anger, but once they get there, they lose it kind of thing. I think it's like a good way to behave, right? Like be kind to everyone, be nice to everyone, but when if someone were to threaten your peace and your happiness or other people's peace and happiness, then like I said, cave their chest in.
Yeah.
I just don't I don't think I don't I'm not good enough to do that.
Yeah. Well, I like it. I like the thought process. So,
Yeah.
okay. So, what question would you want to leave the next guest?
Um, what was the last thing in your life that you felt genuine regret or like you wanted to reverse? What event or thing that you did do you really wish you could remove from the history books of your mind?
You know what's funny is that's really close to one of the questions one of the other guests gave a few times ago too. That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. So what is basically what is a regret you'd like to erase from your timeline essentially?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And why, I guess, but that's kind of assumed that someone would answer the why part of that, I hope.
Perfect. Okay, got it written down. That's a good one. Okay. So, anything else you want to share, Max, before we close down?
No. Well, yeah. I guess I got one
Okay.
thing, just because this will be the first time I'm ever published online or
Mm-hmm.
whatever outside of my own meanderings. Um, I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I'm going to run for public office at some point. So some of the stuff that we talked about kind of touches on how I view about some
Yeah.
things about this, but uh, I have a strong act of service. I feel like that calls me to. I want better for everyone here,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we have more than enough here for everyone to have a lot. And At some point in my career, I don't know when exactly. I tentatively put it at my 5 year plan. We'll see. It might end up becoming 10, but I want to become a public servant because uh, this is a really corny quote from a show that I watch, um, but I love it for all that it says, because it feels very distinctly American, but also distinctly me as well. And that's there's a guy on a show, and he frequently has like a catchphrase, and he says, "I'm the greediest man in the world." And why he says that is because what he wants for people is everything. And that's personally how I feel about what I want. Is I want us to have it all. And I think that we as a people can accommodate that, if if we actually put things in place to do so. So I think we can have all the good things in the world, because I think when humans come together and put our minds together, I think that we can do anything. And anything to create division between that is only distracting us from what we could be when we're united. Um, so I, that's kind of the like my messaging or whatever around this. So this might be like the first time I'm on the internet like in this capacity. So I want to plant that seed. If I ever have more, that this is something to look back on, and people can do it for if they ever need to know where I stand on things. Everything that I said here is where I stand on things about life and things about like where my policy would be.
Nice.
So
I like that. Yeah. And I love your take on it too, right? At the end of the day, you're looking at it from it's all resource management and data analysis, right? To be able to get people everything they need.
I take it very much from a data
Yeah.
perspective. Like I work in the data world, and where we're at now in it is that everything we do is data.
Yep.
Every time we touch our
Yep.
phone, our computer, and everything in between, there is data being transmitted across systems for this. And it's people like me or people like doing who are doing AI
Yep.
models who are trying to take this data and tell us things and glean things about our life. And I think that this is a good thing, because if they can tell us how we can do things better, we can free up ourselves to be doing things that are more fun or more in line with who we want to be and things we want to enjoy. We no longer have to be bound by these things.
Yep.
Um, where in our current
I,
structure that we have in America and maybe in large parts of the world is uh, how it's set up now. I don't think everyone's going to get there with that, and I think we should.
I like that.
Uh Sorry. What was that question? I wanted to go somewhere else with that. So, what was the actual question you just asked?
The actual
Do you
question,
remember?
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think I asked a question. I think I was just saying it was data analysis and resource management, right?
Oh, yes, yes. So, um, all these like the large companies are going to try and use all this data to um better monetize you. They're going to try and extract as much money out of the users as possible based on your usage
Mm-hmm.
habits. But in reality, we could be using this data to make everyone's lives better, right? I'm thinking if you're a sales professional or something like that, right, at a brick and mortar store, and you have to work 8 to 12 hours retail. That probably sucks. But what if we can give you the opportunity where, as a sales agent, you can set your own schedule and go into your brick and mortar store because you set your own appointments with all of your customers because we can give you the data to enable that. So now, as a retail employee, you can now set your own schedule, which is almost unheard of in that space, right? If you like, you can come in and work for 2 hours in the morning and maybe 2 hours at night and maybe 2 hours in the middle of the day. And that's okay because we've have the data to make that happen and support those types of decisions. So like we can use this data to make people's lives better and to like improve how they work and improve how they live. But I'm very scared that that it's going to be used to just further monetize us unless we actually do things to prevent that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's wise. I mean, that to look at it from that trajectory. So we got to make the difference. Got to change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Max, hey, it was awesome having you on here. We got to do it, and yeah. So this episode, I think this is going to end up being like episode 21. So it's going to not come out for quite a few weeks. But when it does, I can't wait for people to hear it. So again, appreciate it, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, it was a blast. I had a good time. Thanks for having me on. Hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Sounds good. I'm game.